You've probably heard the word inflation thrown around a lot. It's this invisible force that seems to shrink your wallet and can even shake up the entire global economy. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on it. We'll break down what it really is, where it comes from, and who's trying to keep it under control. So, let's get right into it.
You know that feeling, right? You look at your paycheck, you look at the prices at the grocery store, and something just doesn't add up. You can't help but think, wait a second, wasn't this cheaper last year? That exact feeling? That's the heart of what we're talking about today.
And this picture really says it all, doesn't it? Just a few years back, 100 euros could get you a shopping cart that was practically overflowing. Today, that very same 100 euro note, well, it gets you a lot less. The number on the bill is the same, but its actual power, its purchasing power, has just kind of vanished into thin air. Which brings us right to our first section. We're calling inflation the silent thief. And for a really good reason. It's like a pickpocket that you never see coming, slowly but surely draining the value right out of your money every single day.
So what's the official definition? It's actually a pretty simple equation. When the general level of prices for everything goes up, the power of your money to buy those things goes down. They're just two sides of the very same coin.
And why does this matter so much? Because the ripple effects are absolutely huge. It's not just that your weekly groceries cost more. The savings you've worked so hard for, they're quietly losing value in the bank. People on fixed incomes, like retirees, find it harder and harder to keep up. It leads to workers demanding higher wages just to stay afloat. And on a bigger scale, it can even make a whole country's products too expensive for the rest of the world to buy.
Okay, so if the consequences are that big, we have to ask the big question. What's actually causing this? Where does inflation even come from in the first place?
Well, economists usually point to two main culprits. On one hand, you've got what's called demand pull inflation. Just picture it. Everyone has a lot of money to spend, but there's not enough stuff to buy. It creates a sort of bidding war that pulls prices up. On the other hand, you have cost push inflation. This happens when it just gets more expensive to make things. Wages, materials, energy, and companies have no choice but to push those higher costs onto us, the consumers. So let's dig into that demand side for a second. Things like higher incomes, tax cuts, a big surge in government spending, or super low interest rates that make borrowing easy, they all do one thing. They pump a ton of cash into the economy. And that's how you get that classic too much money chasing too few goods situation.
Now for the other side of the coin, the cost side. Think about it. When a company has to pay its workers more, or when the price of oil or raw materials skyrockets, where do you think that extra cost eventually ends up? Yep. It lands right on the price tag of the stuff you buy every day.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. But how do we go from just having a gut feeling that prices are going up to the hard numbers and percentages you see on the news? How is this stuff actually measured? The answer is something called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. The best way to think of it is as the economy's thermometer. It's the main tool used to check the temperature of prices and see just how hot things are getting.
So how does this thermometer actually work? It's basically a four-step process. First, they pick a base year to compare everything against, and they set its value at a nice round 100. Then, they create this huge imaginary shopping basket filled with hundreds of things an average person buys. Food, gas, clothes, you name it. But not everything is equal. They weigh the basket so things we spend more on, like housing, have a bigger impact. And finally, they track the total cost of that basket every single month. So if the new number is, say, 103, that means inflation is running at 3%. Simple as that.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most important question. If inflation is like a runaway train, then who's in the driver's seat trying to hit the brakes? Who's responsible for steering the economy? For those of us in the Eurozone, that job falls to the European Central Bank, also known as the ECB. You can think of it as the financial command center for every country that uses the euro.
And the ECB has one core mission, one main job that guides everything they do, to maintain price stability. Their goal is to keep the economy in that perfect Goldilocks zone, not growing too fast and getting too hot, but not slowing down and getting too cold either.
So what does price stability actually look like in numbers?
Well, the ECB's magic number is right around 2%. That's the target, the sweet spot they aim for. It's an inflation rate that's considered healthy enough to keep the economy moving forward without letting things get out of control. So, how do they actually try to hit that 2% target? They have a powerful set of tools called monetary policy. Their biggest and most famous tool is setting interest rates. If they raise rates, borrowing becomes more expensive, which tends to cool the economy down. They can also manage the money supply more directly and even tell commercial banks exactly how much cash they need to keep in their vaults.
In the end, trying to control inflation is a real balancing act. It's like walking a tightrope. If you lean too far in one direction, the economy could grind to a halt. But lean too far the other way, and everyone's savings could just disappear. The challenge, always, is finding that perfect balance. And as we all look toward the future, the real question we have to ask ourselves is, what's the right balance for us?